Well, good morning, everybody. I'd just like to introduce the webinar that we will be holding today. So today we're going to be covering multicultural supervision, building a strong and diverse alcohol and other drug workforce. I'd just like to start off with some acknowledgements and some welcomes. I'd like to acknowledge that I am coming to you from the unceded lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of this country. I would also like to acknowledge the country and lands on which each of you are coming into this webinar from. We would like to recognise First Nations people's continuing connection to land, sky and waters and thank them for protecting this land and its ecosystems since time immemorial. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging and extend that respect to any First Nations colleagues that also are joining us today. We accept our role in stepping forward to extend the hand of friendship and support more than ever and to stand as active allies. We acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And I'd just like to read a recognition statement of people with living and lived experience. Here at NADA, we proudly recognise people with living and lived experience of alcohol or other drug use. We acknowledge their important role in shaping policy, education and services. We acknowledge that it's through their guidance, diverse experience and peer support, lives are saved and health outcomes are realised. We acknowledge that participation takes courage, gives a voice and reduces stigma and discrimination in our community. So I'm just going to start off just with a few sort of little housekeeping just before we move into the content of our webinar today. So how this came about was that in November of last year, so 2023, we actually held a webinar which actually looked at clinical supervision. So we revisited the principles, how it sits in our services, and the importance of clinical supervision in ensuring that we continue to to provide really quality services to the people that access our services. As a follow on from that, we have decided to release a series that looks at specialised supervision. So we've had the first in our series, which was peer work supervision. This is our second, which is multicultural supervision. And we'll also be holding a third supervision, which looks at First Nations cultural supervision and mentoring. So just a few little housekeeping. We have two presenters today who are here to share just not only their expertise but experience around working in multicultural communities, but also the value and importance of starting to consider whether or not our services actually would benefit from multicultural supervision and in looking at the way that it can support the diverse communities that we now all work in. So before I hand over to them, just to let you know a rough format, we're going to hear from our main presenter. We will have opportunities at the end to do questions and answers. We would ask if you could use the Q&A function. You're welcome to put your questions or comments in anonymously. Just make sure that you tick the little box just below the comments box. We won't be referring to the chat this time, so please just if you could include any thoughts or comments or questions in the Q&A section. So I'm going to move now to introducing our first presenter. So we're very fortunate to be working here at NADA with Yasmin Iese, who is a specialised clinical supervisor and multicultural advisor and trainer, and actually works through Open Door Consultancy Services. Yasmin believes in providing culturally sensitive and responsive services to all people accessing alcohol and other drug services. Yasmin is driven by the understanding that each individual, group and organisation have unique needs and cultural backgrounds, and that the best service experience comes from services that are prepared to tailor and adapt to meet those needs. Yasmin is passionate, and I can vouch for our many passionate conversations about this area. Very passionate and committed to ongoing learning and development, and to ensure that we are all up to date with the latest research and best practices in supervision, multicultural supervision, cultural frameworks and systems, and how that informs our policy development. So I'm just going to hand over to Yasmin. Thanks so much, Yasmin, for sharing your expertise today.
Okay, thank you so much, Tony, for that very warm, fabulous introduction. Probably more complimentary than necessary, but thank you so much. Okay, well, I'll just get started because as I was talking about earlier, I do have a bit to get through today, and it might seem like I'm speeding through everything, but as Antonia has mentioned, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions, or I'm happy to come back to anything. So yeah, I'll get started. So I'd like to say good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And I've just got a little blurb just to place context about who I am, even though Antonia has done that better than I have. As you know, my name is Yasmin, and I'm a cultural consultant and supervisor. I've been in the alcohol and drug sector for a little over 25 years, give or take, and have been supervising professionals in the social sector for about 17 years. It came about, the supervising and the supervision came about when I was working in New Zealand for a culturally specific service. And there was a lack of supervisors or cultural supervisors at the time. And so I was asked to supervise some youth educators for the New Zealand Police Force. And so that's kind of where it came about and where my journey started. And that was many, many years ago. So throughout my career, as I've just mentioned, I've worked in multicultural and culturally specific social services, which has allowed me to specialise in culturally responsive care and safe practice. As mentioned, I'm originally from New Zealand and I'm bicultural myself with a mix of Pacific Island and Kiwi heritage. On mum's side is some Spanish, so a bit of a fruit salad. It's a pleasure to be here today, especially to talk about multicultural supervision, which is a crucial yet often overlooked aspect in professional settings. In our increasingly diverse world, the ability to navigate and embrace different cultural perspectives is not just a necessity, it's a powerful tool for growth and understanding. So today I hope to share and convey the importance of multicultural supervision in our professional practices. We will explore how integrating diverse cultural frameworks into supervision can enhance our effectiveness, foster inclusivity, and ultimately lead to better outcomes for us as professionals and those we serve. So without further ado, let's get started. So probably the best place to start is to just describe what multicultural supervision is. And but surprisingly, there are few services in the alcohol and drug sector that are taking this up. So I'm really happy to be able to share that. But just in general, multicultural supervision is a specialised form of professional supervision that acknowledges and addresses the impact of culture on the supervisory relationship. It involves creating safe spaces for supervisees to reflect on their cultural identities and identify any biases that may be present, whilst aiming to improve the quality of care delivered to culturally diverse clients. Multicultural supervision is based on establishing a partnership that values diversity, understands and respects different cultures, and promotes sensitivity to individual differences. The approach incorporates a range of theoretical frameworks and interventions designed to promote cultural understanding and effective communication. It provides a systemic approach for the consideration of language, cultural migration, and resettlement needs across the supervisee and client care plan, as well as culturally relevant therapeutic techniques in cases where Western methodologies may not be appropriate. Multicultural or cultural supervision, as it's known, is an essential aspect of professional practice, particularly in the fields that involve direct interaction with diverse populations. It encompasses various approaches to ensure that supervisors and supervisees are equipped to address the complexities of cultural dynamics in your workplace or in the work that you do. However, despite its critical importance, multicultural supervision is not commonly practiced within mainstream services. Many organisations still rely on traditional supervision models that may not fully address the complexities and nuances of working with culturally and linguistically diverse communities. This can lead to gaps in service delivery, where clients from diverse backgrounds may not receive the culturally responsive care they need. By integrating multicultural supervision into our practices, we can bridge these gaps, enhance creativity and problem solving, and ultimately provide a more inclusive and effective professional environment. Today, I would like to explore approaches to multicultural supervision, its practical implementation in terms of the clinical care standards for alcohol and other drug treatment, particularly as it relates to cultural competence and the care of culturally and linguistically diverse populations. The overall aim is to equip you with the knowledge and tools necessary to advocate for and implement this vital practice in your own organisations. So before we go into the primary aims and types of multicultural supervision, I felt it important to briefly touch on the significance or importance of this supervision. So as we navigate an increasingly diverse workforce, the importance of effective communication and cultural understanding is pertinent. Cultural supervision has emerged as a critical element in promoting effective communication, reducing conflict, and fostering an inclusive work environment where everyone feels respected, valued, and safe, regardless of their cultural perspectives or background. Culturally and linguistically diverse communities are an integral part of the multicultural fabric of Australian society, contributing to the country's social, economic, and cultural development. A multicultural competent approach is essential to providing quality services tailored to these communities' needs. Our clients come from a range of diverse cultural backgrounds, and when we as the professionals understand their unique cultural contexts, the support provided becomes more relevant and impactful. Effective communication in a multicultural setting goes beyond just speaking the same language. It's about understanding non-verbal cues, cultural nuances, and the context behind what is being said. An inclusive environment means a variety of approaches and ideas can be brought to the table, which leads to a holistic support for clients. By fostering inclusivity, organisations can create a ripple effect in the community, promoting understanding among not only culturally diverse communities, but also among other diverse groups. Now that we have an understanding about the significance of multicultural supervision, let's move to look at its primary aims. By understanding the primary aims of multicultural supervision, this helps to place some context around its purpose. The first primary aim of multicultural supervision is effective communication, as you'll hear me say a lot in this presentation. In a multicultural context, understanding nuances and language, gestures, and expressions can make all the difference. By fostering this communication, we bridge gaps that might otherwise hinder therapeutic relationships. Next is a focus on fostering a safe space of cultural understanding and responsiveness. A safe environment encourages clients to express their identities without fear of judgment. This safety leads to deeper conversations, allowing us to uncover the root causes of the challenges. When clients feel secure, they are more likely to engage authentically, leading to more effective interventions. The third aim is improving the quality of care for culturally diverse clients and communities. Culturally competent supervision equips us with the tools to tailor our approaches according to specific cultural needs. By respecting and incorporating clients' cultural backgrounds into treatment plans, we enhance their overall experience and outcomes. And last but not least, multicultural supervision provides culturally supportive professional development for staff. It encourages ongoing learning and growth, ensuring that we remain sensitive and adaptable to the ever-evolving cultural landscape. This professional development allows us as practitioners fostering a culture of continuous improvement. Investing in our staff's cultural competence is not just beneficial for individual growth, it elevates the entire organisation. These goals are essential for creating an inclusive and effective professional environment. By achieving these goals, organisations can better serve their diverse clientele and support their workforce. Let's now explore the types of multicultural supervision. This information should be able to give you some insight into the type of multicultural supervision that may be suitable for you and or your organisation. There are four main types of multicultural supervision that multicultural supervisors can adopt in working with supervisees from diverse backgrounds. The first is cross-cultural supervision. This is where the supervisor and supervisee come from different cultural backgrounds. This allows for cultural perspectives to be shared and explored to improve practice. The second is culturally appropriate supervision. This is where the supervisee works with clients from a different culture. The supervisor helps the supervisee develop culturally sensitive approaches to ensure clients receive appropriate support. The third type is culturally competent supervision, where both the supervisor and supervisee share the same cultural background. They use their shared cultural worldview, models, and frameworks to guide supervision in a culturally grounded manner. The final type is culturally effective supervision, which aims to educate and protect the supervisee so that they can work appropriately and safely with their clients. The supervisor examines the supervisee's environment and practice through a culturally sensitive lens to identify ways to improve cultural effectiveness. Thinking about the types of supervision and how they can be applied to various cultural circumstances, let's go into a little more depth about the benefits of implementing multicultural supervision in your professional practice and development. So multicultural supervision offers numerous benefits to both professionals and clients, and here are some of the key benefits. Just going to move this. So exploring and recognising culturally based social and emotional issues and culturally relevant ways of interpreting issues and different ways of working with those issues. Identifying relevant resources and programs to best meet community needs. Identifying the difference between cultures in relation to family, parenting, communication, emotional expression, etc. Mentoring and guidance, so having a go-to person. Support to name and manage cultural and community complexities and challenges. Specialist support around complex issues such as cultural grief and loss. Validation for cultural ways of working and intentions and goals for the approaches taken when working with multicultural families and communities. So external cultural supervision provides a safe environment for individuals to reflect critically on personal issues, develop skills, and enhance resilience and well-being, thus fostering competence in the workplace. Multicultural supervision is a type of professional supervision that addresses the cultural dimensions inherent in client care. It involves a process where supervisors provide ongoing support and guidance to their supervisees, who are typically practitioners working with diverse populations. Sorry guys, I'm just going to move the screen. Bear with me. With this in mind, let's look at what the main domains of interest are in multicultural supervision. Specific domains of interest. So multicultural supervision covers various domains of interest. These include the supervisee's cultural self-understanding, cultural influences on client identity and healthcare preferences, and addressing inequity and any biases. Specifically, multicultural supervision aims to explore the following domains, and I'm just going to put them all up on the screen for you guys. So cultural influences on the therapeutic relationship, the need for cultural consultation and or referral, family representations of cultural heritage, family minority status, family history of immigration, migration, displacement and relocation, cultural influences on professional theory, method and practice, cultural influences on research and assessment. So understanding these domains is crucial for effective multicultural supervision and for providing culturally sensitive care. Now let's take a look at some of the practice approaches utilised in multicultural supervision and explore how these approaches are applied within the supervisory setting. So corresponding to the 4 types of multicultural supervision explored a little earlier, it is important to know that it encompasses various approaches to ensure that supervisors and supervisees are equipped to address the complexities of cultural dynamics in their work. The main types of multicultural or cultural supervision include culturally sensitive supervision. This approach emphasises the importance of being aware of and sensitive to the cultural backgrounds of both the supervisor and supervisee. It involves the integration of cultural competence into the supervisory process, ensuring that cultural factors are acknowledged and considered in decision-making and case discussions. Intercultural supervision. This type focuses on the interactions between individuals from different cultural backgrounds. Supervisors facilitate discussions that explore how cultural differences may impact therapeutic relationships, treatment approaches, and client outcomes. The aim is to promote mutual understanding and respect between diverse cultural perspectives. Diversity-informed supervision. This approach encourages supervisors to actively engage with and promote diversity within the supervisory relationship and the broader organizational context. It involves examining systemic issues related to power and privilege and how these factors may influence the practice of both the supervisor and supervisee. Reflective supervision. In this approach, supervisors encourage supervisees to engage in self-reflection regarding their own cultural identities, biases, and experiences. This reflective practice fosters greater awareness of how personal and cultural factors can influence professional interactions and decisions. Ethical and advocacy supervision. This type of supervision focuses on the ethical responsibilities of practitioners when working with culturally diverse populations. Supervisors provide guidance on ethical dilemmas that may arise and advocate for culturally appropriate practices within their organisations and communities. And lastly, collaborative supervision. This model involves a partnership between supervisor and supervisee, where both parties contribute to the learning process. It recognises that cultural knowledge is dynamic and situational, and emphasises co-creating knowledge and strategies that are culturally relevant and effective. So where does multicultural supervision sit in terms of other types of professional supervision? Well, an external multicultural supervisor can work in coordination and collaboration with the clinical supervisor to provide the necessary cultural supervision needs of a supervisee. A coordinated approach to clinical and cultural supervision is increasingly being used by social work organisations to ensure that cultural supervision needs are being met. It is important to note that multicultural supervision closely resembles clinical supervision, whereby cultural assessment, cultural formulation, cultural treatment planning, and cultural intervention bring into focus personal one-to-one encounters between practitioner and client and are necessary and critical dimensions of clinical work. Next, I would like to explore how multicultural supervision is applied within the clinical care standards, and more importantly, what that looks like in practice. So multicultural supervision is a vital aspect of the clinical care standards for alcohol and other drug treatment, particularly as it relates to cultural competence and the care of culturally and linguistically diverse populations. Here are some key points and examples of how multicultural supervision fits into these standards. Section 5.3 emphasises the importance of cultural competence, which includes understanding and respecting cultural differences and addressing the specific needs of individuals from diverse backgrounds. So what that might look like from a practical implementation perspective is that clinicians should receive training and supervision in cultural competence to effectively understand and respond to cultural contexts of their clients. This might include learning about different cultural beliefs and practices related to substance use and treatment. Within the standards, Section 5.7 highlights the need for services to be accessible and appropriate for called populations. This includes the provision of interpreters and culturally appropriate resources. So what this might look like is multicultural supervision ensures that clinicians are equipped to provide services that are sensitive to the cultural and linguistic needs of called clients. For instance, supervisors might review case studies with clinicians to discuss how cultural factors influence treatment plans and outcomes. Person-centered care involves collaborative decision-making and the inclusion of family members and significant others, taking into account the cultural context of each client. So in supervision, clinicians can discuss strategies for engaging clients' families in a culturally sensitive manner. This might involve understanding family dynamics and cultural norms that influence treatment, engagement, and adherence. Workforce development. The standards call for ongoing workforce development to ensure that all staff are competent in delivering high-quality care. By integrating this into implementation, multicultural supervision can be part of a professional development programs where supervisors help clinicians develop skills in cultural humility, bias recognition, and culturally responsive communication. By integrating multicultural supervision into these areas, the clinical care standards ensure that AOD treatment is inclusive, respectful, and effective for individuals from all cultural backgrounds. From this, we can see how organisations that implement and provide multicultural supervision can align with aspects of the clinical care standards for alcohol and other drug treatment, particularly pertaining to cultural competence and called communities. Let us now explore further the importance and benefit to organisations. Multicultural supervision offers numerous benefits to organisations. By leveraging their diverse workforce, organisations can enhance creativity, problem solving, and innovation. Multicultural supervision also helps to bridge gaps between service providers and clients from different backgrounds, demonstrating a commitment to cultural responsiveness. This approach not only improves client engagement, but also gives organisations a competitive advantage. Engaging in multicultural supervision promotes professional development. Various cultural frameworks can be explored, enhancing the ability to work with diverse populations. This not only enriches personal growth, but increases the value within the organisation. So, what does this look like in terms of the logistics? Well, multicultural supervision should be provided regularly, either fortnightly or monthly, by a qualified cultural supervisor. This supervision can be delivered to both groups and individuals, ensuring that all professionals supporting culturally diverse clients receive the necessary guidance and support. It is important to note that this type of supervision should be external to the organisation to maintain objectivity and effectiveness. So just to recap and sum up today's session, multicultural supervision is essential for fostering an inclusive and effective professional environment. By implementing and embracing multicultural supervision, organisations can demonstrate their commitment to cultural safety, ethics, and responsiveness. This not only enhances their engagement with culturally diverse communities, but also contributes to the overall success and innovation within the organisation. This now concludes the formal part of today's presentation, and I'd like to thank you all for your time and participation. And if there's time, I'm happy to take any questions or pass on any further information if anyone would like it. And also, if anyone would like access to a list of supporting references, there is a comprehensive list on the NADA Multicultural Fact Sheet, which can be found on their website. And I'm also happy to share more references. I've got many references if anyone would like that. Other than that, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. That was amazing. Very comprehensive. And yes, just would like to remind everybody that Yasmin actually has done a lot of work in putting together a NADA fact sheet, which takes you through a lot of what Yasmin has spoken about today in terms of the principles of multicultural supervision. So I'm thinking that as we haven't got any questions at this point, that we might, if it's okay, we might move on to our second guest. So again, through these webinars, I'm making lots of friends, and I'd like to introduce my new friend, Rakib Islam, who works with Odyssey Multicultural Programs. And as with all these webinars, we love to also hear the perspective of workers on the front line, who can then speak to, the importance of why we might be starting to think about multicultural supervision, particularly more broadly as a sector. So welcome, Rakib, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and sharing your experience with us today. So I might just ask you, Rakib, to just start us off, if you could just describe your role, a little bit of maybe about what you do at Odyssey Multicultural Programs, and then I might ask you a few questions if that's okay.
Yep, sure. Thank you for the introduction. And good morning, everyone. My name is Rakib, and I work with the multicultural programs at Odyssey House. And the title of my role there is AOD treatment worker. And I primarily work with clients in on a one-on-one setting. And majority of my clients are of culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rakib. So I guess just wanting to start off with hearing your thoughts on why is it important for us to be understanding the cultural experience, particularly when people are accessing our services?
Yeah. Yeah. Why? There are many reasons. The first thing that comes to my mind is something that Yasmin mentioned in her presentation as well, which is authentic engagement. And a lot of our clients, they come through the criminal justice system where they are mandated to access the service. And sometimes they're reluctant to engage. So that makes it even more important for us to engage with the client. And validating their cultural experiences can help us build that rapport with the client better. So that's one. And the other thing that I think is us as practitioners, our self-awareness about our own cultural biases and blind spots, and also any misunderstanding related to the cultural experiences can help us sort of avoid any ruptures in the relationship and even possibly to do some informed repair work. Um, yeah, so that's another. And also, it's like a holistic practice. So we also support our clients in terms of case management as well, supporting clients in acculturation process, depending on their immigration experience or their visa status. I'll give you a couple of examples. For instance, I have a client who was referred by the Child Protection Agency, but he's from a culture where government doesn't intervene in family issues, for instance. So removing a child from their parents is something which is beyond his experience and understanding, which is he's not here for a long time. So he's in student visa. So he doesn't understand the context. So he didn't take it seriously that a child protection service is involved. So when I explained it to him, we could put in a safety plan for the client, and also he's now considering quitting substance use. So this is one example. And similar to this, there are, for instance, domestic violence issues where some clients, because of their cultural background, any conjugal conflict is dealt with by parents or local community elders, or even say uncles and aunties, not government agencies. So things like that. So it's very important, I feel, in our work.
That's fantastic examples, Rakib,
Mm.
of just practically how we need to have that deeper cultural understanding and awareness of what the person's experience is. So coming to multicultural supervision, how do you think, reflective spaces like multicultural supervision, how do they support your work, or how can they support our work, in this field?
Yeah. Well, it can support in many ways to sort of develop self-awareness or gaining more knowledge and skills related to cultural experiences, and um, to improve the treatment outcome. We in Odyssey Multicultural Program, we don't have a formal multicultural supervision, but there are multiple ways or processes how we support our treatment workers to sort of provide a culturally competent service to our clients. For instance, we have client allocation meeting where we try to match the cultural background and language with the client. So that's one. And then we have internal supervision, which is also culturally informed. In addition to that, we have clinical case review fortnightly, where we get to present a case where everyone from the team can provide their insight and in their experience. And we have very experienced and experienced practitioners who have more than 15, 20 years of experience and a lot of insights about this work. And we are also sort of supported and encouraged to seek external supervision as well. And we work with external supervisors who have extensive experience of working with called clients. So
you
yes,
have a number of ways that support your work,
yeah,
particularly. It sounds like you work in such a range of communities as well.
yeah, exactly.
So you have a
Yeah,
range of things
yeah,
put in place to
you're right.
actually support you and the work that you do in the
Yeah, yeah,
team.
yeah. So
Yeah.
even without a formal framework for multicultural supervision, our service is culturally sensitive care for the clients. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So it was interesting because Yasmin was talking about this being a developing area of specialised supervision, and one that we're all becoming increasingly aware of, and starting to think a bit more creatively about how our services might benefit from, multicultural supervision and multicultural mentoring. What do you think? I mean, obviously you have systems in your service, and your service has a multicultural focus, and it sounds like that lens sits across everything that you do. So I'm just thinking of the broader AOD sector. What do you think would be the benefits for us as a sector, both for multicultural services, so specific ones like yourself, but also, for other, I guess, more generalist services? What are the benefits? What do we need to be thinking about as a sector?
Um, well, I was just thinking about general services, for instance. I think almost 28% of the people living in this country are born overseas, and there are other people who were born here, but at least each one of their parents were born overseas, and they speak a different language at home or practice a different culture. So that means almost 1/3 of the population is of a diverse cultural background. And even in generalist services, there will be a representation of this large part of the community. So that means, in that sense, all the services, if they are culturally informed, especially through a support system and a reflective space such as the multicultural supervision, would benefit greatly, the way that Yasmin beautifully shared in her presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Because it is a growing area, and I guess something that we're all starting to think about. I love your reflection or reminder to us all that so many of us come from a variety of backgrounds, and also I'd like to mention of practicing different faiths,
Yes.
and having such a broader and greater understanding of that intersect with how that might affect a person's relationship with substance, for example, and how substances actually are seen and used in different communities would be something that maybe we would all benefit from understanding
Absolutely. Yeah.
some of the greater complexities there.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Rakib. Is there anything else that you feel like you would like to add or share from your perspective from the front line?
Um, yeah, it's just something I've recently started doing to improve my practice from a cultural point of view is reading a bit more about the history of the of some countries where my clients are from, to get a bit more of their cultural context, and attending some community events has been really helpful for me to get a better understanding.
So
Yeah.
you're talking about that self-education for
Yes,
us as
exactly.
workers,
Yeah. Yes.
and learning
Mm.
and I love
Growing.
that suggestion. So
Yeah.
attending community groups as well,
Mm.
community events.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Seems like very practical advice for a kid. I think we
Thank
could
you.
all jump onto that one. So I might see if there are any thoughts or questions, or Yasmin, if you had anything that you wanted to add in following on from any of the comments that Rakib has just made or shared, from the worker perspective.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I mean, Antonia, in many of our conversations, I always look at the broader perspective, and you know, it is multicultural supervision as is cultural supervision, Indigenous cultural supervision. I mean, it's not new to us. Like it's been around for a long time. It's new to the sector. It's new to the social sector in that sense of like, oh, what is this? And I think at the best of times, even just, you know, generalist supervision has got there's some gaps in service and just general supervision. And we've had these chats before, Antonia. So, you know, and I understand it's really difficult for NGOs to have to, you know, to think, they would start thinking, oh no, oh my gosh, I have to do another supervision. What's this about? But I hope today that I've been able to convey that, you know, it kind of has to be a consideration made by most organisations, as has just been pointed out. You know, the population is just going to continue to grow, and we are a multicultural society. So it has to sort of be at least has to be a consideration for most services. But also we have to look at kind of the systems and the you know, the policies and the procedures, and then the overarching systems, because without that support and without that structure and those frameworks in place, then services are unable to sort of have these frameworks in their kind of neck of the woods, or in the groundwork and the grassroots community work that they do. So it really does start at the top. And that's kind of what I've been harping on about to everyone that I could harp on about about making that change and incorporating it into you know, some of the commissioning models, some of the policies and the procedures as just what is expected, as you would with other priority populations, you know. So this all just needs to be considered and put into a perspective from that higher end, looking up level.
So we've got actually a great question here. It's sort of around that sort of practical implementation. Would you recommend cultural supervision being used instead of clinical supervision? So I know that you'd said cultural supervision is a type of clinical supervision. Just practically, how do you see those different forms, say, fitting in together? Are you saying one or over the other? Because we've also got an added comment that, for example, with Aboriginal staff members, or some organisations are specifically organising Aboriginal cultural supervision, and that is in addition to the clinical supervision that would be for all of the team. Can you perhaps speak to that?
Well, yeah, of course. You know, from my perspective, your clinical supervision and cultural supervision resemble closely together. So, for example, I mean, that would be up to the organisation, I'd say, to determine the organisation if they can provide the clinical supervision and then provide the multicultural or cultural supervision, then that'd be fantastic. But for example, if I was supervising Rakib, for example, then we would be going clinically over his caseload, but we would have this would be done from a cultural lens. So we would be looking at client caseload, any challenges, you know, and issues that may have arisen, and we would be doing this with a cultural lens on throughout that session. So this could for Rakib be the one supervision that he gets, because he would receive a wraparound supervision in that sense. Because if his caseload is majority culturally and linguistically diverse, and he goes to a mainstream or a Western supervision, and then he's seeing me, they're both doing the same thing, except meeting Rakib's needs, cultural needs, are going to be met through the multicultural supervision, as well as give him that clinical guidance. But also, I want to say that when we say clinical, this for a lot of our communities is a very Western approach. So we may not want to, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I'm just using you as an example. It might be the fact that we don't want to talk about what the clinical component is within what he's bringing to supervision in that session. We might want to look at traditional customs. We might want to be looking at the migration issues. We might want to be looking at the history, as Rakib said, of the, what's impacting, because what's important to the client becomes what the focus is for us. So, in saying that, it can be both or it can be one.
It sounds like it's really about being responsive to the communities that you're working in. And that might change sometimes over time, but also thinking about what your workers also need to make sure that they feel adequately supported, culturally adequately supported in the work
Yes.
that they're doing in communities. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's really useful. Thank you. And I love that your presentation has given us a number of options to think about as a sector, and to probably look at, which ones would fit, and it might be a bit of a blend of all of them. It sounds like what your suggestion, though, was also that, starting to also think about your professional development and ensuring that there is a focus and a commitment to ensuring that, across the board staff are culturally aware and culturally appropriately trained to be able to work in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you picked that up, Antonio, because it is so important. And it is about perspective, and how you view multicultural supervision or cultural supervision and the importance of it. So I think that's just about also what the type of things that we're doing today is like, doing these sort of, awareness sessions and helping people to really understand what it is, what it's about, what the purpose is, what they might expect if they were to engage in multicultural supervision. And it just gives them a clearer idea of how this might support their professional growth and professional development with going forward in their professional careers.
Yeah,
because this is something that they can not only just have in this service, but these are skills that they will be given. It's like I read somewhere last night when I was doing all my research about this, that it is an ongoing form. Multicultural supervision is an ongoing form of cultural training.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, I like that. I really like that when I read that, because that is exactly what it is. So somebody receiving that multicultural support is consistently supported in culturally responsive and safe work, with culturally, with not just, and you don't have to just be called yourself. You can be non-called, but working with the called community. So this is something that you could take ongoing, for the rest of your career. It's not just something that you get in that service. So it's really valuable.
I'm also thinking just as humans,
Yeah,
living in our multicultural world, and the work that we're trying to do to be a unified, humanity, that it's also a life skill, is learning to understand and be open-minded. And Rakib, you talked about, being able to pick up your blind spots and your unconscious biases. And I think that's something as humans we would all really benefit from. Yeah. Look, I'm mindful of time. I just wanted to also mention, thank you for connecting how this fits with a lot of the work we're doing across the sector around the clinical care standards. It's a really important opportunity for us to be able to stop and stand back and reflect on the quality of our services, and to sort of be able to break things down a bit and really be quite be quite reflective in reviewing what we're doing and the quality of what we're providing. I guess just with our last couple of minutes, Rakib and Yasmin, would you both have sort of a last sort of maybe comment, or you think that like a takeaway for our sector? I think particularly at the moment while we are being, given the opportunity to reflect and think about the quality of the work that we do. Rakib, am I putting you on the spot? If you
No,
give
it's
us a final thought.
um, it's actually I really like the point that you were mentioning earlier about that we live in a multicultural society. So as humans and also as service providers, I think this is absolutely important for us to be culturally aware, and multicultural supervision is a great way of doing that, as Yasmin said about it's a form of cultural training.
Mm.
So which is amazing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Yasmin?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot today, so probably sick of my voice. But if I could just leave with just thinking, with just sharing that multicultural supervision is developing, and I encourage you all to give it some more reflection and think about some of the things that we've talked about today and how this might impact on your practice. And then, just by multicultural supervision, having that sort of inclusivity and that responsiveness, it doesn't just cater to a cultural lens, but it caters to all diverse groups. So I think that that's something that you can take as a takeaway from today. And yeah, I just encourage you to give it some reflection, and feel free to reach out if you need any further information.
Thank you so much. Well, I'd just like to really thank both Yasmin and Rakib for their time in preparing and collecting their thoughts, and and in the conversations that we've had in the lead up to this. Thank you also for sharing your expertise and your perspectives. I think it's a very important area for our sector to be considering and looking at and reflecting and becoming really creative about how we can provide this level of support with our current resourcing. But I also wanted to acknowledge your comment looking into the future, how we also encourage this level of resourcing and support for our workforce in future funding submissions, to ensure that it becomes embedded in a standard way, that we actually not just improve the services that we provide, but that we actually support, our incredible workforce in the work that they do every day.
Absolutely.
So on that note, thank you so much. Just also want to put a bit of a shout out to our tech support of the NADA team, who, as always, are behind the scenes troubleshooting. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. We appreciate your busyness and the demands on your time, and we appreciate that you've joined us today. And please reach out if you want more information. The webinar has been recorded. It will be made available, and also will go up on the website. But in the meantime, take care, everybody. Remember, you're precious, very important to the sector, and you do amazing work. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Yasmin and Rakib.